This is a Defocus Media production.
Audio Jungle.
What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Daryl Glover.
And I'm Dr. Jennifer Lyerly, resident optometry nerd.
And welcome to Defocus Media, optometry's #1 podcast, where we discuss the hottest topics, latest technology, eyewear, practice management, and more. So sit back, relax, and defocus.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We've got a very interesting topic because you know how much Daryl and I love talking about career opportunities that are more outside the box. I think a lot of us feel the pressure when we first come out of school to find that dream job right away, and the chances of the perfect opportunity immediately coming for you are pretty slim, I think, in talking to our colleagues around the country. And so sometimes when you're faced with some opportunities that you're like, some of these could be good, but maybe none of them are exactly what I was planning on. Signing in and getting locked down to that contract can be pretty scary because you're not certain it's the right place for you, and you just knock yourself out of, depending on the contract you're signing, a 10-mile radius, a 50-mile radius. I mean, we've seen non-competes that are really crazy depending on where you're living and practicing. So an alternative option is what we're talking about tonight, which is kind of putting together fill-in work across a couple of different practices. And that has always seemed like maybe not such a viable opportunity, but we've got an expert on our show this evening who's here to share with us about how it's really possible to make this work. Please welcome Dr. Ali Khoshnevis. Khoshnevis.
Yeah, that's perfect. Not many people can get that right, Dr. Jen. So that's quite impressive.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad Jen said it because I would have messed it up.
I practiced so bad, and then I still I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's a tough one, Dr. Jen. So I appreciate you practicing, and you said it perfectly. Thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to finally come face to face with you guys. I've listened to your show before, and excited to talk to all the listeners.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we're glad that you're on. As Jen stated, you got a lot of cool things going on, man. And before we dive deep into all these amazing things and your back, I can't even get it out. Let's go into your background is basically what I'm trying to get out there. Let's make that happen. Right?
Sure. Happy to do that.
Let me tell you guys, I've had a long day today. Jen, I don't know about you, but I've been up since 5 like I normally am. And I went to clinic, had several meetings prior to clinic. And when I get out of clinic, I just got off a phone call with Zoom with the students over at PCO. They allowed me to come and talk, so that was quite fun and exciting. It's always great to see the young, the students, the future of optometry, and just hear their voice and hear their questions and their concerns and tell them that they're going to be okay, that optometry is great. But it's been a long day. So if I'm kind of here and there, that's why. So I'm going to stop running my mouth, and it's all on you, man. Let's hear your background and tell us all about yourself.
I guess I have a quite unusual background for an optometrist. I mean, I probably was like those fourth-year students you talked to at PCO, all starry-eyed, like waiting to get out and actually make some money. And I started my path. I went out of school. I'm like, I'm going to do a residency, and I went to Bascom Palmer because it's a nice place to learn all about disease. And I was like, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I'm just going to do eye disease all day, every day. I love it. And my aspiration really was to open up a heavily diseased practice in an underserved part of the community in Charlotte. I even looked at some spots in some certain areas of Charlotte. And ultimately, I wanted to grow that into an MDOD type style practice. And, life takes you down its own path. I never had any expectation of doing what I'm doing today. I just kind of accepted life as it came to me. And it's been a unique opportunity. So it's been nice. I can dive into some of the things if you guys want to hear.
Yeah, because I mean, okay, setting the stage, a
Sure.
residency trained optometrist specializing in ocular disease, but then you end up becoming a tech innovator in optometry. So, I mean, how did that happen?
Oh, it's well, unfortunately, it's one of those sad stories that really got me motivated enough to leave practice. I was practicing with my brother, Amir Khoshnevis, who's in Charlotte, and we were taking care of a patient. It was primarily Amir's patient. It was a longtime patient of ours, and this is way back in 2010. This is before there was Good RX, and he was taking a lot of medication. He couldn't afford them. And when we looked at his list, we saw a bunch of generics. And back then, most doctors, and you guys probably too young, but most of us really thought generics were all $4 because Walmart had their promotional thing. And we picked up the phone, we started calling pharmacies, and his generic of Lipitor went from $150 at CVS to $130 at Walgreens to $70 at Walmart. And then there was a mom and pop shop, not even a mile down the road from the CVS he was going to, that was selling it for $11. And my brother and I looked at each other and we were like, this is insane. This is the same exact drug, right? And it was a sad story because he actually, not even a couple weeks after we did this whole research looking to see how we can help him, his wife called my brother and said he had suffered from a massive stroke and passed away. And for us, it was like, how could this ever happen? And how could no one have guided him before that? And so we started an app that, believe it or not, is exactly like GoodRx. Before GoodRx had come out, it was called WeRx. And you can type in your drug, your zip code, and it showed you drug prices. It's still out there, by the way. And we were in Consumer Reports with GoodRx. We were featured in a lot of different publications, PBS. I was, interviewed on Univision and all of this stuff. It was a fun, really, really fun road for us. And it was a successful endeavor, but not quite as successful as GoodRx. But subsequently, I just had this, I learned so much in that process. And sometimes it takes a bit of a tragedy to really soul search. And that soul searching allowed me to go down this path that, shortly after that, I started a technology company that was in eye care. And I came back to my roots in eye care, and I tried to do something that I could help, our fellow colleagues. And so it was a lot of fun. It's an interesting path, and I never thought I'd be here, like I said, but it is what it is, and it's been a really fun road.
Well, I don't want to underplay. I mean, you after the WeRx, you went more into developing some of this OD specific software, and in 2015, you kind of got your big break, if you will, when you sold that software to Revolution EHR, which many of us are probably using in our clinics. So
Yeah.
for anyone out there there's a lot of young doctors who are like, I'm making an app, I'm creating this innovation or this piece of technology, but to actually get it successfully on the market and sold to a larger company, do you have any tips for like how to attract interest and actually make yourself successful in that front?
It's interesting because I think a lot of people, ideas are really worthless. I tell everybody that. And oftentimes we hold them very close to our chest. I know some doctors and some friends and colleagues that, I spend a lot of time just coaching young folks that want to become entrepreneurs. And there's a saying, they're called wantrepreneurs. They always want to be an entrepreneur, but they don't really want to take that first step. And I think that is really the challenge. The challenge is to take the first step into the unknown, and that's to take a risk. That's what it's always about. So if I had to give anyone a tip, I've never met an entrepreneur in my entire life that wasn't willing to take a risk and wasn't willing to put themselves out there in a vulnerable position. Because you can't make it in this world if you're not willing to talk about your idea to every single person that you meet. I don't care if you have an idea in optometry, you see someone on the street, you're like, hey, hold on, can I tell you about this thing? You know, and that's really the passion that it takes. I mean, for me, it was like that. I left practice when I started WeRx, and I told my brother, I'm leaving practice, which was very, very scary for me. And I moved to Miami, Florida, because I got accepted into an accelerator down here. And I didn't have any money. And the accelerator gave us $20,000, but that, you know, for me wasn't, you know, enough to really stop practicing and do this full time. And for about 3 months, I talked to every single person that I could ever imagine. I went into the hospital systems. I went and talked to, you know, physicians, and I went to talk to community health centers and just put myself out there. But I literally risked it all. And so it made me just terrified. I had to do everything that I could to make sure, you know, I wasn't going to be homeless. And sometimes it takes that. So if I had to give someone advice, what I would say in all honesty is take a risk, but make a calculated risk. I think good entrepreneurs know how to make calculated risks.
Yeah. Now tell me this, you said you coach some folks in eye care that want to become, you know, entrepreneurs, maybe in the tech world and things of that nature. Over the last year or two, have you seen an increase in the amount of folks that are wanting to be entrepreneurs? Because as I mentioned at the top of the show, I speak to a lot of students, a lot of millennial docs, and it seems like everyone now is going to have a side hustle, and it's some type of business or service that they're trying to offer. I just feel like there's been a big shift in a way that people look at optometry now. Are you seeing a shift in increasing folks doing this stuff?
Yeah, and it's not just in optometry, it's across the healthcare spectrum. We have more and more physicians and dentists and optometrists that are deciding that they want to create something to make healthcare better. I even have a lot of optometrists that come to me with ideas that are not eye care relevant, or they're not in the eye care space. And I always tell them, just pause on that and really make sure it's something you're passionate about, because I don't think you should build a business solely to make money. You have to have a lot of passion behind it, because trust me, there's hard times. There's times where you want to sit in your room and cry like a little baby. And you know, I've had moments like that myself. And I think if you're not passionate, you're just going to give up on that day. The next day, you're going to go, what am I doing? Let me go back to my 9 to 5. But to answer your question, Dr. Darrell, I see so many young optometrists that want to create something. And I think that's sort of parlay into our conversation today, because everyone is searching for that opportunity where they can have a better work-life balance. And a lot of times they feel like being an entrepreneur and creating something might provide them with that lifestyle. And I think that's the attractive part of being an entrepreneur. I will tell someone to be very, very mindful about that mindset, because if you guys see, I got a lot of grays, and there's a lot of stress.
Some grays popping in the beard too, and I don't even have any hair on my head, man.
Well, I'm losing.
It's hard out here on these streets, man.
It is. I mean, my favorite, like, I love reggae, and so I listen to a lot of reggae, and one of my favorite artists says, who said life not hard? Every man got their struggle. So like that's what life's about. So no matter what it is, we have to be able to face the world with a lot of courage. We can't expect that things are going to fall into place very easily, and then we're going to be able to wash our hands and go, I got the best life ever, and life's not like that.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
So speaking of work-life balance, I know that that's one of the real driving forces behind your latest creation. So we want to talk about Clinic Cover. What is the mission behind this, and what are you trying to achieve?
Well, I think, you know, as an organization, if you look at everyone involved in this project, so Scott Jens, who's the founder of Revolution EHR, and I are co-CEOs on this mission. Riyadh, who I've built technology with for the last 10 years, and Derek Artis, who's a board member of ours. Every single person on this team is sort of, they've experienced eye care for quite a long time, and they've seen it transform. But one of the things that are incredibly important to every single person that's involved in this project is the ability to expand eye care, and that's to connect doctors with patients. That's the overarching mission, because really what we want to do is a twofold thing. One is we want to provide eye care professionals like those young docs that you were talking to at PCO an opportunity to come out of school and find the right fit for them and create a work-life balance that makes them happy. Because guess what? There, you know, when I graduated, or even when my brother graduated from optometry school, we were ranked as one of the happiest professions in all of professions. Today, we're at the bottom 15%. So why do you think that is? I think it has a lot to do with lack of autonomy, work-life balance. Maybe you can say student debt plays a role in it, right? But there's a lot of reasons why we're not happy as doctors. And so Clinic Cover's goal is to help those eye care professionals coming out of school, put a smile on their face, make them feel like they can work where they want, how they want, when they want. And then ultimately, on the other side is the eye care businesses, these practices that are not optimizing their week, right? Because here we live in a world now where the healthcare consumer has changed dramatically. Nowadays, more healthcare consumers want to come to their doctor on their time, whether that's the weekends, late evenings, things like that. We can fill those gaps. If there's a doctor that only wants to work 3 days a week and doesn't mind working in the evening, it's no skin off their back, bring them into the practice, allow them to serve those patients that may go somewhere else. So at the end of the day, every time there's a dark exam room, there's a missed opportunity to take care of a patient. And Clinic Cover hopefully will open those avenues for docs.
Yeah, this is pretty cool, man, and I'm seeing where this can expand into permanent job placements. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of different areas that you can go with this. Trainings, seminars, things of that nature. I mean, the whole world is at your fingertips. Is this really more eye care related, or is this any kind of healthcare disciplinary out there? I mean, what are you covering as far as coverage?
Well, Dr. Darrell, what's interesting is if you look outside of eye care, there's things like this that exist. So there's one for veterinarian medicine, right? It's called RU. There's one for dentistry. There's things like this for nurses that are really, really popular, right? Nurse Fly allows a nurse, because they can practice in any state, a nurse can literally fly to California and say, I want to work in San Diego for a week, right?
Yeah.
And this is opening up a new lifestyle for nurses, because you know that's an incredibly stressful job. And this allows a nurse to have that flexibility, right? So we want to do the same thing in eye care. And our focus right now is to create really a community of docs who say, look, I can come out of school and sign up a contract that's going to tie my hands. Maybe I have to, if I live in Charlotte, I'd have to work in Durham if I leave the place, and I've heard people say things like this to me. Or you can come out of school and you can try to learn a little bit more about yourself. And, the ancient Greeks at the Delphi Oracle, it's called, there's a big, a post that says, know thyself. And I don't think if you come out of school, you really know who you are. Look at my path. I literally did fill-in works as my company was failing and as we were running out of money so that I could keep going. and then I could turn things around, right? So you never know. There's another gal or guy out there that wants, that has that opportunity to fill the gaps and do something else that they really enjoy. So I think there's a lot of applications, but we're laser beam focused on the eye care industry because it's our profession.
Yeah.
So
Well, I want to dig into this a little deeper, and I want to, there's always this debate: private practice, corporate practice. Who are your clients? Is it both private and corporate and private, or is it just one sector in particular?
yeah, well, we really want anyone to use clinic cover, right? Because it doesn't make sense if it's pigeonholed into one area, right? So I've talked to a lot large private practices. I've talked to small private practices. I've talked to all of these groups like Vision Source and everything about joining in. We've talked to corporate entities about being a part of this. At the end of the day, we want to provide an eye care professional the opportunity to try everything. Why just say, look, I know private practice is for me, yet they might be an introvert and they don't like the fact that they have to, constantly be on their toes and make everyone feel great. Maybe that's the thing that they don't want to do. And they learn that very quickly and they go, wow, all my life I thought I wanted to be in private practice, but then I worked there and I'm like, no, that's not my cup of tea. By the way, that happened to me. I wouldn't say I'm an introvert, but it wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't enjoy it. And so, at the end of the day, I ended up going down a different path. So I think everybody gets to choose. That's what would make me really happy, that ultimately anyone could say, yes, I only want to do single day coverage in private practices, or I only want to do them in corporate entities because, it's easier for me. Whatever it is, we really want to be able to support that.
I like that. You can customize it to exactly what they want, which is the whole point, so they can learn who they are. Maybe they want to test the waters with private practice and test the waters with corporate, see which direction they want to go before they
Yeah.
see that dotted line. Outside of optometrists, is this something that's going to be offered to ophthalmologists, opticians, front desk folks? I mean, how deep are you guys going into business?
Yeah, we've talked about all of those things. I was just chatting with someone the other day and they said, I'm an optician. I'd really love to have something like this for myself because I could go and fill gaps in different places. And I think there is an application for it all. And just full transparency, right now we really are focused on the eye care professional. It doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. And really, we think that the most important thing right now is to get as many doctors on the platform that want to maybe try something new. And it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to be a new grad out of school to use clinic cover. You could be like a doc. We have a doc that retired and he wants to do fill-in work, right? We have someone that works 4 days a week, has a full-time gig, but wants to add that extra day. We even have people that work 5 days a week, but they want to add that extra day so they could save up to go on that vacation that they always wanted to go on. So
I like
really, it's for everybody, right?
So check this out. I have a lot of traveling nurses that walk through my doors, and they're always bragging about, "Oh man, next week I'm gonna be in Southern California. The weather's gonna be right, and I may stay there for 2 weeks. Hell, maybe even three." But from my understanding, they get paid for their travel, room, board, and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
How does that work if I have a doctor that's in Charlotte, North Carolina, but wants to test the waters in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina? Does the company or do you guys pay for putting them up in a hotel, or how does that work?
Well, just so everyone is super clear about clinic cover, we're not like an agency that pays the doctor. We're sort of just a matchmaking service, right? We allow those connections to happen, and that's it.
Gotcha.
And then we're out of the way. Like
Gotcha.
some of those things, like the traveling nurse, some of them go through temp agencies, some of them use things like Nurse Fly, and really, I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes they have hospitals that are, most of the time they're hospitals that are employing them with big checkbooks, right? They could put them up in the Marriott and say, I don't know if a private practice has that capacity, but they can, right? It's all on the application. So, if you want to know how it works, I could quickly explain, how the application works.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. What about yourself, Jen? I think it'd be great to just
Yeah, yeah.
break
I'm
that.
curious too about like, do you set like how much you expect to get paid, or you just look at job posting? So let's talk through all that.
Yeah, that's a great point. So how we've set it up is, as a business or a practice, you set up your profile. We use Google to find your practice and put your picture up and everything. You can change all of those things. And then you can add more about your practice, what equipment you have. Do you do dry eye? You have a LipiFlow, you have OCT, these type of things. What insurances you typically see, a blurb about your practice. And then as the eye care professional, you set up your profile as well, so you can put your picture on there. You can talk about the things that you've done. You can talk about equipment you're familiar with. And what happens is, when a business, a practice, makes a post, an opportunity, they're going to designate the hours, how many patients you'll see in the practice, how many staff members are there to support you, which is important, right? Sometimes I've heard, people walking in and they're the only one there. And then the hourly, yeah, you would be,
We'll turn right back around.
yeah, like, I think I'm sick. I got COVID, and then leave. um, and then they designate how much they're willing to pay per hour, and then any bonus, any incentive they would like to give you, like put you up in the Marriott and Raleigh or whatnot, like right by Crabtree Mall, so you can walk next door or something. But whatever it is. So then what happens is, our application actually geolocates the doctors. They designate the radius in which they want to be notified. So if you're in Charlotte, you're not going to get a Durham notification. But if you say a 30-mile radius, you might get a little tiny suburb outside of Charlotte, right? And everyone gets a text message that notifies them of the opportunity that matches their practice criteria. They can look at the opportunity, just click one button, open the app. It shows them everything about that opportunity. And then they can raise their hand and say, I'm interested. Oh, that is the only time a practice even sees who you are, what your name is, what your contact information is. So you have control as the eye care professional. And then then they can, once you raise your hand, they can call you, they can text you, or they can email you, because you've given them that permission, and then you can make a match. And if there's any other incentive you want to talk about, or how you're going to pay each other, or how they're going to pay you, you can discuss that over your personal dialogue that you have. So that's how it works.
Yeah, no, you guys have really thought this through from top to bottom. While we have you online right now, I'd love to do a little more digging and research just for Jen and I's curiosity.
Yeah, sure.
What's the average pay that doctors are getting on this platform? You guys are seeing everything from corporate to private, so I'm curious to know what that number is looking like, because you always see stuff in different forums, and I want to see what's really real out there.
Well, one of the things that we've done is we've looked around the country as well to sort of gauge what an average pay would be. So it always depends on the area in which you practice. So you two are very lucky. You live in a very lucrative part of the country, right? So North Carolina ranks amongst the highest in the country. So it's $650 up for a day's work. With incentive, it can get as high as $800-900, and we have some folks in the North Carolina area that do pay that with an incentive. It could even be $1,000-1,200 we've had. So it can be really high, and it can be very lucrative. If you're in a large metropolitan area where there's a large concentration of docs, it does scale down. For example, in South Florida, in the Miami area, we're at $550 to $600, and you don't have as much of an incentive either. Some people offer an incentive, but it's usually like 500% of the day, and the day usually doesn't go above $1,000. So where you're at, your starting is usually what you'll get. So it really is solely based on geographic area and how many doctors are in that area, and it is variant throughout the country. I will tell you that.
Well, those are numbers I think that a lot of people are going to be like, wow, that's pretty good. Because when you look at some of these reports of average salaries, and again, Daryl, I think we're in an area that's kind of an exception, but a new grad starting salary, for example, at 110, that is not $550 a day. You know what I mean? So if you do the math, that's still, even on the lower areas, like an excellent paycheck for a day's work.
Yeah. We're typically seeing 600 as the mean right now. And if you think about it, that's about $144,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. No. So that's incredibly attractive, I think, to people.
Yeah.
I know, like you mentioned, the idea of getting locked into a contract with the non-compete, that's a big thing that scares a lot of doctors when they're making a decision. And obviously by doing gig work, that'd be off the table. But there are also some things that, you'd have to consider with taking in part-time work. And besides like the not having a guarantee of a steady paycheck, insurance is something that you're going to need to cover for yourself and provide. But if you're working in a small private practice, a lot of times no insurance is offered there either. So that might not be a huge difference from a full-time job. What about credentialing? Because if you're independently contracting, you're going to need to be responsible for making sure you're on all the insurance panels that a practice is going to need you to be on.
Yeah. So what's interesting about there's these locum tenens clause that exist across the board, which is this idea of single day coverage docs, and we call it fill-in docs in our particular industry. So there's provisions in all of the insurances that allow for this. So theoretically, if you work less than 11 days in an office, there's no credentialing necessary. If it's 11 to, I think, 60 days for most of them, now I'm just spitballing, every one of them has a little bit of a different provision. But if you work from 11 to 60 days in a practice, then you need to be credentialed with that insurance, but not necessarily for that practice. Does that make sense? So you need to be maybe a VSP credentialed doc, but you don't have to be a VSP credentialed doc in Dr. Jen's office necessarily. After that, then you're part of that practice if you're working there more than 60 days. And that's not really the clinic cover model. So if you go past that, you really need to get credentialed in that practice as well. So that's kind of how it works.
Wow. Well, this is a game changer, and it's like you guys really dropped perfect timing, because I'm pretty sure
that's true.
Was booming during COVID. Because if you have someone that has COVID in the practice and they no longer can practice for 14 days, whatever amount of time, then you need to fill in that position. And we all know, especially in North Carolina, business has been booming. So you don't want to not have a doctor in that office, because you're going to have a lot of butts that will sit in that chair, and you need to be able to service those patients. So I can tell you guys have been doing extremely well, I'm pretty sure, over the last 6 months to 8 months or a year.
Well, we're a new platform too, so we didn't get all of the COVID wave. So right now we're really focused on growing this thing, and I believe it's something that the timing is good, not just from a COVID standpoint. Also, like you guys know, a lot of these young doctors, they really want to have a nice work-life balance. Things have changed since I've come out of school. I was like laser beam focused on private practice. It was like no one could tell me anything else. Hey, you want to be an entrepreneur? No, I don't know anything about entrepreneurship. I just want to own a private practice. And so I think also from a demographic, there's a changing demographic. And it's not just in eye care, guys. With the gig economies, it's universal right now. It's, from ride sharing to sharing your house to delivering food, all of these things that people are doing just so that they can work and be their own boss. I think that is a very, very attractive thing for a human being in this day and age.
Yeah, no, I love it. And just to be able diversify your portfolio, even if it's within eye care, to see private practice, corporate, hospital setting. I mean, whatever it may be. It's just good to be able to have those different pieces that you can dip into and explore it, but also, make that money as well. So I
Yeah,
think
think of
it's
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, think about the, cold start practice. You come in, you buy this practice, or you start cold and you're like sweating all the time because you're looking at, how much you're paying and how much you're making. And you need to go out and like work when you're not in your practice. So this is a good opportunity for a doc like that as well.
Even if you want to open a practice and you want to go to a new
Yeah.
area and you want to see what it's like, you can actually go to one of these locations and practice and see how the patient base is and see if
Yeah.
that's an investment that you really want to make. So there's a lot of positive things about this clinic cover, this program that you guys have created.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And one of our biggest hopes, if I could express one thing to everyone that's watching, listening, is that we really implore you to really come on, sign up. You don't have to pay anything to sign up. Put yourself out there. Just see what opportunities arise in your area. Don't be afraid to, put your name in the hat, because nothing's going to happen except that opportunities may show up at your door that you never imagined before, and you can take them on and just go, wow, I never expected it to be like this in this type of practice. And it could lead you down a whole nother path. Just open your mind. Don't be like me and say, I only want to do one thing. Open yourself up to the world and let it come to you.
Jen, we have a new look now. We're laser focused. This is
Yeah, yeah.
Laser beam.
The blinders, the racehorse blinders.
Yeah.
It really stuck with me at the top of the show when you were talking about we're in the bottom 15% of happiness as a profession. And I do believe that a lot of what makes, especially the younger generation of doctors, unhappy is being in a job that's making them unhappy. And they're burnout, they're overworked, and they're unfulfilled in their career. And that's really the whole reason Daryl and I ever started podcasting, was because there's so much that's great about this profession. And so I can guarantee for almost everybody, if they were in a different job opportunity that was a better fit for them, they would love what they were doing in optometry. It's not optometry they're unhappy with. It's just the particular career model that they're in. And this gives you a way out. So anybody who feels like you're stuck in a job and this job is something you hate, there are so many opportunities. Like, take that risk on yourself to get out of what's making you unhappy and try on something new. And you might find that your love for optometry is completely reinvigorated.
It flourishes. And Dr. Jen, you nailed a word that I hear over and over and over. It's the word stuck. A lot of docs feel stuck in the practice mode that they're in, and that 1 year, they sign a 1 year contract. It ends up becoming 5 years. They end up staying in that job because they're afraid to leave. They're afraid of, what am I going to do if I can't find another opportunity? And man, I'm a big advocate of I've spent a lot of time reading philosophy, and I talk about a guy who Soren Kierkegaard wrote something that really was profound to me, and he said, despair lies in between who you are and who you're supposed to be. That's where despair is. So when you're in a bad job and you know that you could be so much more than that, there's a lot of despair. There's a lot of pain in that. So don't be afraid to change it. And Carl Jung, the psychiatrist, used to always say, anything that gives you anxiety or fear, it's just telling you that you're on the right path. You got to keep pushing through that, and it's going to get you to where you want to go.
Man, this is great. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I was talking to students, and just everything you're saying is pretty much the conversation that I was having. I was just telling them that the name of the presentation was the blueprint to becoming your favorite optometrist. That's kind of like the tagline that has been created.
I love it.
And I really was going in on telling them that, I'm always blown away by how many doctors, they get out of school and they go work for a company, and they don't even know what the company's vision is. They don't know what their core values are, and they wonder why they're upset when they haven't been able to figure out what their purpose is, what their why is, and what their core values are to check to see if it actually aligns with the company that they're being a part of. How are you going to amplify your why if you're with a company that has something completely different from the vision and why that you, or your purpose that you have? So it's very important to just make sure that all those things align. And I was just having that conversation with those students and letting them know that this is a real deal. And don't just always chase that money. You want to make sure that everything aligns perfectly, because if not, you're wasting air. You're wasting time. You're not going to be as impactful as you potentially can be.
I really want to thank you, Daryl, for bringing that message to doctors. I really think that that's a beautiful thing that you just said, because I said it at the beginning. Know thyself is a mantra for me, and I just mentioned Carl Jung, and I'll say one other thing that really, Carl Jung said that the world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, they'll tell you who you are, and that's when you end up in that bad job, because you didn't take the time for that self-discovery. What you're sharing with them, if they leave that meeting and they really go and they become reflective and they go inside and they start asking themselves, what are my core values? Who am I? What do I want to be when I grow up? And then align their job to that. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Who knew, Dr. Khoshnevis, we'd have you on tech entrepreneur, optometrist, and philosopher. So we really appreciated our Zen moment with you.
Hey, I got one more Zen moment. There was a quote that I had in the lecture. I just pulled it up so I can remember it. But it's by Mark Twain, and he said the two most important days in your life are the day that you were born and the day that you find out why. So not to continue.
One of my favorites. One of my favorites.
Real, man. Like, people just don't understand. Like when you find that purpose, you're never working. Everything is so easy. I even went into detail with you when it comes to networking. You want to make sure that you align yourself with people that have that same vision so it can amplify what you're trying to do. I mean, it's so real. But that's why Jen and I do quite amazing. We have similar energy, similar core values, and we're able to amplify our voice with this Defocus Media platform. And even our co-hosts or our sister brother podcasts that are on our platform, they all have the same vision. And I think that's why we became the #1 optometry podcast in the world, just simply because we understand it, we get it, and we're putting it out there, and we have ownership of it.
It's so authentic. It's so authentic talking to you guys, and that's the key. I think when people are listening, they want to make sure that there's authenticity. Do you guys really love what you do, and do you love sharing that? And it comes out in how you share your message. And so I found this so from myself, to use your word, invigorating. I really have, and it makes me so happy to be a part of a group of professionals like you guys. And so thank you. I really appreciate that. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, tell people where they can go to get signed up if they're interested in exploring Clinic Cover.
Yeah, it's very easy. Cliniccover.com. It has 2 C's in the middle there, but cliniccover.com. You can create your free profile. Everything's completely free. The only thing we charge is per post for the practices. So when the practices want to put a fill-in position out there, they pay anywhere between $10 to $30, depending on the location. If there's a lot of fill-in docs in an area and they're bound to get a good lead and fill that day, they're going to pay a little bit more. If they're in a smaller town, they're going to pay less. They may not have as many fill-ins in that area.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Y'all have a great evening. Thanks as always for joining us. And thank you again for bringing the passion. So we love working with you. We feel the same love for optometry we do.
Thank you, guys.
Talk to you later.
Take care. Bye.
All right, colleagues, and it's a wrap. Thank you dearly for hanging out with the D-Focus Media team. We hope truly something resonated with you. And if it did, be sure to give us 5 stars. And make sure you follow us on all social media platforms. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you named it. And our handle is at D-Focus Media on all platforms. And until next time, be sure to keep it 2020. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.